Hey, good morning, Trish. Hey, I'm going to get started here in just a couple of minutes.
All right.
Thank you for joining.
Welcome to Coffee with Democrats, a sensible platform for progressive conversations. Coffee with Democrats is a grassroots movement dedicated to hearing from Democrats, candidates, legislators, and friends from all political backgrounds who want great conversations. Coffee with Democrats is committed to increase Democrat voter registration and Democrat voter turnout by making voting more exciting and meaningful. And now here's your host of Coffee with Democrats, Kevin Dawson.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Today is June 15th, just a couple more days, and we're going to have Juneteenth celebrations all over the United States to celebrate the emancipation. And we're really excited about, this time of the year. This is my favorite time of the year. It's the middle of the summer. We're getting ready to have the equinox coming up here in a couple of days. So I'm really excited about that. And so thanks everybody for coming on and joining. This is also Pride Month. We don't want to forget about that. We're really excited about, inclusion of everybody. Treat everybody the same. It is we the people, not they versus them or whatever. It's we. We are all in this together, and we should respect everybody. So we are so happy that that we are going this about halfway through the month. So we're really excited. This is a good time of the year. We've got with us today Trish Ranson. She is the minority caucus chair for the Democratic Party. She is a Stillwater fan. She is a Cowboy fan. Our co-founder, Steve Holcomb, he is also a Cowboy fan up there in Pawhuska. So I'm sick that we couldn't be with you in person today, Trish, but we will make sure that we make that connection soon because you are such a great advocate for the Democrats. And you made headlines yesterday. So good morning.
Good morning. Yes, I did make headlines yesterday, along with the rest of the leadership team representing the Democratic caucus. We put forward two letters, one to State Auditor Cindy Byrd and the other to Attorney General Gettner Drummond, all in regards to the State Department of Education and application for federal funds and the appropriate spending of those dollars. So hoping to hear back from both of them very soon.
Well, let me give everybody just a little bit of a background about who you are. Trish is representing District 34, like I said, up in the kind of the north central part of Oklahoma. Trish has, she's in her, is this your second or your third term?
This is my third term.
Third term at the Oklahoma House of Representatives. Prior to that, running for office, she taught elementary music for 15 years. So I've got to say this. of all the teachers that I had through grade school, middle school, and high school, I had the closest relationships with my music teachers of any of them. So I'm so glad to read that, you were conducting the OSU Youth Choir. As a legislator, you combined your knowledge, expertise, passion, compassion to improve public education. And again, that goes back to what you were just talking about earlier with these letters about the audit about federal funds. So that's, it's amazing. And then you serve on multiple committees, and for the 59th session, those include the education appropriations, health services, long-term care, agriculture and rural development, higher education, and career tech. And so this is an amazing accomplishment. So let's talk a little bit about Trish Ranson just for a little bit. What's your favorite coffee?
What's my favorite coffee? Okay, if I'm going to a coffee shop, it is a grande latte, and it's plain Jane, no sugar, regular milk. Yes, very, very, very plain Jane. I like it.
Well, I talked quite a bit on here about my favorite coffee is McDonald's K-Cup, just the medium roast, and I doctor it up. I am not a coffee fan. I never have been, even though I drink coffee every single day, and sometimes multiple times every single day. But I always start my day with the K-Cup, and I doctor it up with sweetener. I don't put sugar in it, but I do have to sweeten it up with some pink sweetener. And I also put carnation, whatever that instant coffee, whatever creamer is. So it takes away from the coffee taste, but it's something that I have to have, I think, every day just to keep me going. I used to not like coffee so much that I would not drink it. But after working on the railroad for so many years, after a few years of working, 24, 36 hours straight, I got to the point where I was just having such a hard time staying awake that I started drinking coffee, and I tried my first coffee black. And man, oh man, that was painful. I could not stand that. So, and then somebody introduced me to sweetening it up and putting some creamer in it. And man, I was off to the races after that.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. My husband drinks coffee black, and I can't do that. I have to have milk. And I used to be sugar, but I've gotten away from that just because, if you drink more than one cup of coffee a day and sugar every time, then that adds your sugar intake. So I kind of cut back on that as well. But I love coffee, and I didn't always, but it's great I love the flavor of it now, especially with the steamed milk in the latte, but it's just such a great thing to do while you're talking with people. So to have a cup of coffee and to have a conversation, it's lovely.
Yes. Yeah. I have to agree with you. So let's talk a little bit more. You grew up where? Where were you born and raised at?
Well, I was born in Wichita, Kansas, but
Whoa, wait a minute. No way. I was born in Wichita, Kansas.
Yep. But I've lived most of my childhood in Ponca City, Oklahoma. My father was a machinist for Mertz Machine Shop, and he got a job there pretty close after I was born, and the whole family moved to Ponca City, and so I spent my childhood there, graduated from Poe High, and then went actually back to Wichita, Kansas to do my undergrad at Wichita State University.
Great university. Go Shockers.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, that is such an amazing, that we've got that kind of connection, that Jayhawk connection there and the Wooshock connection. It's very nice. I actually was born and raised through elementary school in Wichita, but I went over to El Dorado High School and went to middle school and high school over in El Dorado.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to work for the railroad. I did everything backwards. So I found a career. Then I found a family. Then I decided later in life to go back to college, and I went to OU for my undergrad and my master's degree. And we just moved. It's going on now 3 years ago from Wichita to Norman.
Wow.
So we are we have been here before. I've been all over the nation with the railroad. We moved 10 different times, but one of my most favorite places of living was in Chickasha, Oklahoma, back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so we're back home, in my opinion, even though Wichita was where I was born and raised. I feel like I've been adopted into Oklahoma. So,
well, that is one thing that Oklahoma is very good at doing. When you move here, I mean, especially Stillwater is a town where we have a revolving population. People come to school, they leave, they come back, they retire here, and it doesn't matter, you know, if you are new to Stillwater or you've lived in Stillwater your whole life. Oklahoma just adopts you, and everyone is so welcoming. And that is one of the things that I've enjoyed about running for office, was just getting to meet more and more of my neighbors and my community members, and just realizing, yeah, that we're all in this together. It's fabulous.
So your time there in the Ponca Stillwater area. Now you live in Stillwater now, right?
Correct.
Okay. So your time there in Stillwater, and particularly the time that you started running for the legislature, it seems to me like you are kind of a lone wolf up there.
Well, I am a blue dot in a red sea, but, you know, Stillwater has been represented by a Democrat for at least 20 years or 15 years. Yeah, at least 15 years, because Corey Williams was my predecessor and he had served 10 before I came in. So it's not uncommon, but it is something that is, you know, constantly have to work and make sure that I'm making connections and listening to my constituents.
Exactly. And that's the wonderful thing about Oklahoma is, you know, you get this divisiveness in some places, but in other places like Norman and Stillwater, it's very inclusive and it's very opening. And, you know, I just, it amazes me every single time that I go out into the community and we interact, how great Oklahomans really are. So we're so happy to have you with us today to talk a little bit. Let's talk something. You know, let's talk shop. Let's talk about your legislative session you had this last time. I've talked to other legislators, and they've talked about this legislation, this legislative session, being rather painful.
Yes.
So, do you want to talk about, you know, some of your experiences that you had, and you know, with this last legislative session?
You know, it's interesting because, as you said, yes, it was painful. You know, this is my 5th year in the legislature, and every year I seem to finish up the session and go, wow, that was tough. And it just seems like every year is expanding on that. And this last year, especially with the supermajority, public with they're fighting each other, and they're spending most of their time fighting each other, and they're not paying attention to what they really need to be doing. And so this last session, I mean, the big issue of this last session was the voucher scheme, the idea of providing tax credits to parents who have children in private school or are homeschooling. And that issue, that key piece of making sure that got passed, took basically sidetracked the whole budget process. And there were deals being made, and, you know, yes, there was additional funding for public education, which we really needed. A $3,000 to $6,000 teacher pay raise is very essential. But it was done as a trade-off for, you know, you accept the private school vouchers, and then we'll add more money into the public education funding. That just, to me, is backwards. And, you know, especially when they're touting this off as parent choice. The majority of parents choose public education, so we should be funding public education first and foremost, and then if there's any other issues after the fact, then looking at that. But I just, that's one thing that passed, and that's part of the budget. I'm very concerned about it going forward because other states have seen that when they've gone to that, they have lost money, and it actually costs more to educate, even though right now they're thinking, oh, well, if it's private, then parents foot that bill and we don't need to worry about public funding. But in essence, it ends up more money through, you know, finding money that was spent inappropriately, to just the cost of things, and the funding that we put aside for these tax credits basically would reimburse the people that are already in the private schooling system or the home.
Exactly.
It's not to grow. And when they call it a tax credit, I mean, that's what was so confusing to me, because tax credits are created to grow an industry. And this is not growing an industry. It's just sending money elsewhere. And so that was the big issue. And then everything else took second place. And then once everything was that public education funding piece that partnered with the private school vouchers, once that was determined, then all of a sudden the whole budget just plopped onto our agendas. And it was like, we could have been discussing these things on the budget before now. And we didn't, because no one wanted to talk about what could be possible. They didn't want to negotiate any further. They just wanted to get what was going to be leadership approved and move on. And there was a lot of line items in that budget. Where did this come from? There was not even a bill on. So that's concerning, because that's not being transparent. That is not showing the public and giving the public an opportunity to speak on what we spend our money on. And really, it's not our money. It is the taxpayer money, and we have to be good stewards of that.
Right. So from that, Oklahoma became the first nation to actually go out and publicly start using public funds for a Catholic school.
Yes, that was separate from the legislative process. But yes, that was, all of a sudden there was that board had voted unanimously against it before, and then there were some replacements. And that last replacement was replaced by the speaker. And that was the Friday before. The Monday they had the meeting, and he was the deciding vote on that. So that to me tells me that was all part of the negotiation process that none of us were privy to unless we were the upper echelons of leadership.
Right. And from that, one of the things that we've seen come from that was, again, you've been writing some letters to Governor Drummond, the Attorney General for the state of Oklahoma. But we've also seen Attorney General Drummond come out and actually denounce this and say that it may be illegal.
Yes, he will be challenging that. And the letter that we wrote to Attorney General Drummond dealt with the gear funds back through COVID. And that's the governor's emergency education relief funds. We had initially written a letter in 2020 to a previous Attorney General O'Connor, and in regards to the spending of those gear funds, because we had been aware that we were made aware, of that those dollars were funding things outside the scope of those federal dollars, like video game systems, Christmas trees, those kinds of things. And so we were wanting to know where we are as far as an investigation. What's the update on that? And because some gear funds have actually also been frozen, because to make sure that if we have to pay back those federal dollars, I mean, that's a double payment, because those federal dollars are the taxpayer dollars that we send to the federal government. And then, we get both ways. It's frustrating. And we need some clarity, because if this is a precedent for how to appropriate federal dollars, then we are very worried about our current superintendent.
Right, exactly. And we're going to get in and talk about him just a little bit later. But this whole process is, it seems like some of these back channels were like you said, it was the entire intent was to come in here and undermine the separation of church and state.
Right.
So you spoke just a minute ago about the previous attorney general, and it's rather interesting that he seems to be a kind of a stooge for Governor Stitt, and it was such a refreshing event that Gettner won the primary and actually defeated him, and we actually now have somebody that, we've always looked at that office with a little bit of dread as a Democrat in the state of Oklahoma, because it's been kind of used as a political tool. Now all of a sudden we've got somebody in there that seems like here all of a sudden he's trying to apply the rule of law, and that instead of a political activist, and that's kind of refreshing.
Well, if you recall, I mean, he ran against Mike Hunter in 2018, and Mike Hunter ended up winning that election. But then when Mike Hunter resigned, that's when the governor appointed O'Connor. So of course O'Connor is going to follow along the lines of what the governor wants, because he's an appointment rather than an elected official. It was good to see that Governor Drummond filed again and won, because, I think one of the great things about Attorney General Drummond is that he's got his own mind, and he sees, he is an expert in the law, and he is going to follow along with that, and regardless of who is in the governor's seat.
Right. And that's kind of refreshing. Now all of a sudden
isn't it?
Yeah. Just talk to people. I mean, you and I, we were at the state Democratic Party convention, and I had conversations with so many other Democrats, and we're all kind of spinning, our heads are spinning, because now all of a sudden we got somebody that respects the rule of law. And that's something that, like you said, as O'Connor, it just didn't happen. And so we saw a lot of negative things take place, including this full-fledged attack on women's reproductive rights.
Yep.
And that was something that was very discouraging, that came out of that, that whole thing that transpired, right after Roe v. Wade and the case before the Supreme Court. So, and again, Governor Drummond came out and actually kind of said, that ain't going to work. And we've had some court cases that have actually helped that along. So I really hope that as we move forward and get ready to get geared up for our 2024 election process, that more people will understand that women's rights were under attack. We're absolutely under attack. And it wasn't going to stop with just reproductive rights. It was going to go beyond that. And
and then, you have, like, right in the news currently is, the Southern Baptist disallowing female ministers in church. And that's, that's part of the whole process and the whole global look at this. And women's rights are being challenged. And it's fascinating. I mean, last night I went to the community theater in Stillwater, the Town and Gown, and they did the musical Beehive. And I don't know if you've ever seen Beehive, the musical, but it's basically a 60s music montage.
right.
And in it, they talk about, or actually they sing songs and they talk about women's liberation in the 60s. And it was struck me so hard that, wow, it was the 1960s that women liberated themselves. And so now here we are in 2023, almost back to where we were before then.
Right.
It's so frustrating to see that, our daughters and our nieces and our granddaughters are having less rights than we had when we were their age. And that's just frustrating.
Right. Now, all of a sudden we're going back to, the Peyton Place days, and now, and with the book that just came out here recently, Handmaid's Tale. And
right.
That's kind of the mentality of some of the people that we're having to have these conversations with and about. So, again, we continue to use that as the talking point. We continue to hope that more people will get behind the Democratic cause, because really it is an inclusive. The Democrats are inclusive. We want to make sure that everybody has the same rights, and it is we the people and not they versus them. So that it's so refreshing. Steve, you've got a question?
Yeah, good morning, Trish. This is Steve Holcomb. How are you?
I'm well. Good morning, Steve.
So I'm from Pawhuska originally, and was born and raised in Osage County. So it's interesting to hear that you were right across the border there on the west side. You were raised up on the west side of Osage County there in Ponca City.
Yeah.
And I lived in Stillwater first of all, I bleed orange because so much of my family went to OSU, but I lived in Stillwater from 84 until 2013. I actually ran for district attorney down there in 2002 in Payne and Logan counties. But I wanted to ask you a question. Is that house across from the YMCA, does it still say that Garth and Sandy lived in that house? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know that house is no longer. It was torn down.
Oh, shoot. Well, anyway, it's interesting because Garth, of course, has been in the news lately.
Yes.
And I have to say that, and I'm sure you'll agree, that it's really encouraging to see someone like Garth, an Oklahoman, and so well known in his industry and of course in the entertainment industry. And he's speaking very publicly about inclusivity as if that has to be said, and yet it does in this period that we're living in. And it's so refreshing to have someone of his stature and taking, maybe he doesn't have as much to risk as a lot of other entertainers, but nonetheless, there's still risks involved. And he's taken them, and he just comes out and says, look, I'm for inclusivity and diversity. And if you don't like that, then, you're what. And I'm curious about your perspective of that. And I'll just leave it at that. That's my question.
Well, I have always been a Garth Brooks fan. His music and his temperament is very Oklahoman. He's just matter of fact. And if you recall with the inauguration, when Biden was inaugurated, he was one of the performers, and he got some backlash for performing at the Democratic inauguration. And his stance was, this is the president of the United States. So of course I'm going to perform. I was invited. He is our president. So even then, it's something that he said that shouldn't have to be said, but needed to be said. And so now here we go again, with this whole idea of, inclusivity. Why should he have to say it? But at the same time, it's refreshing to hear him say that, because friends in low places. That even just the words of the song and just the name of the bar, it's folks from all different levels, and it's all inclusive, and it's a business. So of course he's going to offer Bud Light, because that's one of the top selling beers. And if the customers want Bud Light, he's going to provide it. So it's one of those things where it's like, come on, this is business. We need to continue on and do what we need to do. And we should be inclusive of everyone that comes in the door.
Yeah, I think that and Kevin and I have talked a lot about this, just in terms of getting the messaging across to folks out there that maybe don't vote very much or at all. And of course, Garth is not one of the younger entertainers. Taylor Swift would be one that comes to mind, that I'm not sure she's done anything exactly like what Garth has said, but she seems to be very proactive in her opinions, and those opinions seem to be, along the lines of the diversity and inclusivity. And so that's encouraging to me in terms of drawing in, hopefully, younger voters and just kind of waking them up.
Well, and diversity and inclusion, that is something that Gen Z understands, I think, better than any generation. They are the most diverse generation we have had. And I think what's fascinating with talking with high school students, former students, college students, just this look of puzzlement on their face when they hear older generations attack diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's like, I don't understand why that's a big deal. I mean, what does it matter if you're gay or trans or straight or male or female, or what does it matter? They don't understand why the older generations make those distinctions. And I think quite honestly, to have someone from an older generation like Garth Brooks talk about that, that's really, really important, because then it's like he appeals to the younger generation as well, because they're like, yeah, he gets it. How come you all can't get it?
Exactly. Exactly. Where is the state right now legislatively, and for what the governor has signed in terms of gay rights and marriage equality and such? Where are we right now statewide?
Well, right now we do have the right to marry. So that hasn't been challenged so far that I know of. I mean, right now, as far as where we are in the legislative calendar, we are done with regular session. We are we're in special session right now. We met on Monday, the House did, to override one of the vetoes that the governor put forward. He vetoed two compact bills, one tribal compact on tobacco and one on license plates. And the license plate bill was a House bill, so we voted to override that. The Senate did not meet, so we couldn't hear the compact bill on tobacco, because that's a Senate bill. They're planning to come back into session, I think, June 26th. So in preparation for that, we pushed the sine die for special session back another month so that it ends on July 31st. That way, we can get both of those done, and allow for any scheduling issues that we might have, because we're going to have to come back in to hear that Senate bill. And so hopefully that'll get finalized.
Yeah. I asked that because personally, I was raised in the 60s and primarily the 70s. And this was before the term LGBTQ existed, and
Right.
when gay rights were just not even talked about, or if they were, it was in whispered tones. And I like to think that over the years, I've really come along and changed and become and appreciated more and more that the attack on LGBTQ is an attack on all of our civil rights.
Oh,
And that if we're not standing up, and so to not be gay, I have a nephew who's gay. I'm not gay. I'm married, been married a long time, but to not stand up for that kind of diversity and inclusion is to not stand up for everyone's civil rights. And it's just been a challenge. I think it is maybe for many others of my generation. I know you're speaking about the younger generation where it's kind of like, well, of course, it's no big deal because they've been raised in the last 25 or 30 years.
mm-hmm.
But I'm 65 years old now. And so that's been my adjustment, and I'm glad I've made it. Probably have more work to do, but I'm just more and more aware, hopefully, of the need to stand up and speak out, even in rural Oklahoma. And by the way, though you are in a kind of an urban community, I know Stillwater is not a suburb of any other community. And
Correct.
It's also a hub in many respects, with kind of feelers out to all of urban Oklahoma, all of rural Oklahoma, of course, because, it's Oklahoma State University. You got the huge animal science department there, the vet lab, et cetera. And that just seems also to provide opportunities for young rural voters to connect even with your politics there in Stillwater.
Right. And, I have been nicknamed the last rural Democrat, but I agree with you. We're not really rural. We're not really urban. We're a college town, and OSU is the land grant college of the state. And so extensions are based out of OSU. and that goes to all 77 counties. And I would agree that it's good for rural ears to hear Democratic voices, just because they hear more of the Republican voices, as far as, internet access and cable access. I mean, they're getting news more from national news such as Fox, more than they're getting state news. And so what I find as a legislator, that my education skills are always being sought after, because it's teaching folks what is basic civics, like the difference between state politics versus national politics. The idea that, yes, we have a Democratic president, we do, but we have a top-down Republican state government. And so things that happen here are very different than that happen on the national stage. And if there's things that we don't like about our state, it's not because of our president, it's because of our governor. So, and that there's a big disconnect there, because it's like, oh no, I mean, he's Republican, he's God-fearing. I'm like, well, yeah, well, we have Democrats who are God-fearing too, because God's bigger than Republican or Democrat. But it's good to be that voice, and to be able to understand the concerns that they have and the fears that they have, because oftentimes, the media stokes those fears, and then all of a sudden we've got more issues rather than less.
Thanks, Kevin, for letting me kind of continue here with another question. I'm curious about, speaking of media, about the status of the Stillwater News Press and the Daily Collegian. The newspapers are under tremendous stress, and I speak of that again from being from up here in Pawhuska. We have a newspaper here, the Journal Capital, that is just a shadow of what it was in the past. I consider it to be a very poor newspaper. But I'm curious about how the newspaper media is in Stillwater at this point, and also with Oklahoma State University and the Ocali.
Right. The news press is still alive, although it's not as strong as it has been in the past. COVID gave a big hit to them. Their subscription rate went down. The idea of going more towards online media, and our newspapers across the state have been consolidating. So I believe we consolidate with the Enid paper and the Perry paper. So there's kind of like a consortium of local newspapers that share articles and so forth, and run on advertising dollars and subscription dollars. But it's, as our technology evolves, most of us consume our media or our news through online sources. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to subscribe to a newspaper and read the newspaper from front to back anymore. So that's concerning. The Daily the Ocali, the Ocali, it's still going on. I mean, we've got broadcast students and journalism students that are reporters for that, and it's always great to kind of hear their questions when they reach out to me and asking about issues, because it's a very different viewpoint. The college level viewpoint is very different from what I hear from my retirees, basically, who are in Stillwater as well. So I think we need to be focused on consuming media and news from as close to local as possible, because that really kind of gets us grounded in our community. That shows us what our values are, as opposed to what overreaching values are from other states or from Washington, D.C. We need to see what's going on locally.
Well, thanks so much for visiting with me this morning, and I'll hand the gavel back over to Kevin, and I see Representative Rosecrants is also on. Thank you.
Nice talking to you, Steve.
Well, we do have, before we get to Representative Rosecrants, we did have a comment by Madeline Ryan Smith. She was a candidate running for Georgia House District 158. She is a great friend of ours, and she just wanted to make a quick post, and I'm just going to read it real quick. And having these conversations about young voters is important, but it's also important for older generations to not only acknowledge young voters, but also include them at the table. And that was something that she really found useful in the conversation that you two were having. And I felt that that was, beneficial to read that out loud to everybody before we got.
That's one of the things too that being in a college town affords me. Each campaign that I have done, which I've run 3 campaigns, I have hired college students because I think it's really important. They're 50% of our population. Maybe they don't vote 50%, but they're still 50% of our population. And I need to make sure that I represent them as much as I represent anyone else. And to have college students on my campaign has been eye-opening on a lot of different issues, just because there are issues that they come across, like, women's rights, obviously, but during the whole time through COVID and ideas of public health and the ideas of our race relations, just there are issues that they come across that they have a very different viewpoint. And oftentimes we think about the older generations mentoring the younger generation, but we need to flip that and allow for the younger generation to mentor the older generations, because I learned so much from them that it made me a better candidate and it makes me a better representative because I have their voice in my ear as well.
And that's such an important aspect of every single legislator that I know and spent time with has got somebody that's working on their side. And while we were at the convention, the college Dems were having their convention up there as well, and they voted in a new president, and they're sending the gavel from OU up to OSU, and we've got a great representative that's coming on board as a college Dem that we're really excited about nurturing and spending time with, and also learning from. I think we've got a lot to learn from, the people that are just now entering adulthood and becoming active within politics.
Absolutely.
So we have also joining us, and please, Representative Ranson, if you have a few more minutes, we'd like for you to stick around and maybe engage in conversation with Representative Rosecrants. But
sure,
we've got on board with us Jacob Rosecrants. He's representative for House District 46 here in Oklahoma. He's a great advocate for education, just like Representative Ranson is. He got his start also as from the classroom. He was elected out of the classroom into the Oklahoma House in 2017. He taught social studies in middle school and high school and in inner cities. The experience Jacob has is a unique perspective into many of the issues and trauma facing children today, which drove him into action and becoming a representative. It is his passion to do all he can to help children throughout Oklahoma have a positive advocacy and common sense bipartisan legislation. Representative Rosecrants, he is my representative, and that's why I'm so proud to be on here with Representative Rosecrants today, because I'm really interested in his take on this last legislative session as well. So welcome, Representative Rosecrants.
Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, you're great.
Awesome. I'm sorry I couldn't get there in person, but I'm telling you, outside of session, the first few weeks outside of session is just like kind of whoa, because you're trying to get used to, a different life outside of what the Capitol was. And speaking about what the life was like at the Capitol, it was an absolute clown show. And this is what happens when there is zero political balance. I don't care, if you're in DC, if you're in Oklahoma, or if you're in some blue state. If you have no balance, if you have just one party just calling the shots, then this is what happens: infighting. And that's exactly what happened. And it had to do with, I'm sure that Representative Ranson's already spoken about this. I just hopped on, so I apologize. I wasn't listening, but it had to do with vouchers, which is just not a very popular thing here in the state of Oklahoma. So they had to try to put plans together and do all this. And when I say they, it's GOP leadership. Two of our leaders who are going to term out here in the next cycle. So everything just gets exacerbated. Like this next session in 2024 is gonna be crazy. But knowing's half the battle. So at least we kind of understand all that. But again, I did catch a little bit of what Representative Ranson was saying. First of all, Boomer Sooner, number one, because I love Trish and I love the color orange, and I actually like OSU kind of. But I gotta be honest. How about them Sooners? How about them Sooners softball? Woo!
That was awesome.
Yeah, I watched every minute of it. I love what those ladies are doing. And another thing too, whatever somebody wants to leave the program to be closer to family, let's not bemoan that. Let's give it up for Jordy Ball being our ace pitcher, but then let's also just pat her on the back and make sure we understand that individuals can do what individuals want to do, so I want to make sure and put that out there as well. But Kevin, tell me, what would you like me to speak about? I mean, I told you this last session was just crazy. Do you want details? Do you want
let's talk about one of your neighboring legislators, Representative McBride. He has been one of those people in the past that's really been a hard-nosed Republican, and then in this session he's terming out, and all of a sudden he's calling out Superintendent Walters. I found that to be kind of an interesting dynamic, and particularly his challenge on the vouchers that you were just talking about.
Well, and let's be honest, McBride is still a Republican. He still hits the green button on the bad stuff, and he still hits the red button. But if you also going to the Capitol is all about and being successful, or whatever else you want to call it, as a representative, is all about building relationships. And I have taken the time to build a relationship with Representative McBride pretty much since day one, because he is a very staunch public education advocate, and that's what drew me into this position. So I know that his heart is true on this. I just want to be a little bit heavier than the bark. I'm just hearing a lot of barking, and then I'm not hearing any of the biting. Like, here's a perfect. Walters came out to the Capitol for the budget A and B hearing or whatever. I was expecting Mark McBride to just bring the hammer down from what he told me and from what he told other people, and it was just like, hey, buddy. It's just like, no, you've got to call this dude out, and that's the big frustration. But the good news is, yes, he has that heart, and he's not alone. There is no love for Ryan Walters outside of a few representatives, at least on the House side. But they still don't show the strength. Even if they would just unite, they would have the strength to push forward impeachment. Now, without GOP leadership and the majority of the majority in favor of that's not going to happen. So I want people to make sure. I try to stay on the issues, but I try to stay, a realist as well, especially when it comes to things like that. That would be rare if the party in power impeached their own person. But yeah, that's.
Well, let's be real about this. They're not going to impeach him, and if they did, it's so hypothetical if they would ever do that. But the fact is, the political capital that they would burn by doing that would be immense. So there's nobody out there that's going to introduce articles of impeachment. We need to just come to a realization that this guy's going to be the superintendent until, what is it, 2027?
2026, and that should be the very last year that we'll ever have to deal with this a-hole. So, I mean, because I'm doing everything I can, literally. I mean, I wake up every day thinking, okay, impeachment off the table, but what else can we do to make sure that this person is held accountable? And especially, it's not so much all the crazy Twitter things he says. I think, honestly, somebody is paid to put all that out there.
Right.
I do not think that's him. I know he is. You've seen how he is and how he's acted, but I think his Twitter, it's all meant to just kind of quote unquote own the libs, and it's literally that's what they want. They want the ratios, I guess is what you call it. They want that because they know that quote unquote they're owning the libs. Again, they're only just speaking to I would say a minority of the base voters of the Republican Party. Honestly, now they're very loud and they come out to vote, and I think that's where we're kind of having some issues here, because I believe Representative Ranson did speak about the youth vote. I've done the same thing out here in a college town. You know that, Kevin.
Right.
I've gotten young people involved in my campaigns every single time, and we're going into our sixth campaign since 2016, which is not okay.
Right.
Leave me alone, Republicans.
Right. Right.
No, I'm ready for it though. But yeah, so we hired young college Democrats as well out here, and Connor Boren is my campaign manager. Never done it before, but I really did that on purpose because I wanted to get the perspective of the young folks, and it was eye opening. I think I might have brought this up here on the show before, but it's more federal type issues. It just really is, and I think I find it hard. And also another thing, just young people in general don't trust politicians. That's what it is. It's Democrat, Republican. It doesn't matter. They're not trusting us because I think it's the issues that speak to them. We can't do a whole heck of a lot about. And then so they just kind of check out of the system. I've noticed that. Has anybody else noticed that, Trish? Have you ever noticed that kind of where it's just like we're not being the voice that they need, even though we're trying type thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because a lot of times too, then it turns into, well, politics doesn't affect me. So then it goes into that, and then it's the checkout there.
Yep.
But
That's what I'm seeing down here. And the
but
frustration's real. And you guys understand that. But and plus, well, another thing too, I'm sorry, but I do not get elected by young folks in HD 46. I just don't. So I have to find that balance between making sure that these folks, 50 and above, have their voices heard, because guess what? They come out to vote. And at the same time, I
right.
want to make sure and get my young folks involved who are leaving the state, by the way, too. That's another big problem. We're training these kiddos up and we're trying to get them involved, and they're just like, oh my God, Minnesota looks great. So
Right.
we're stuck here oh, well, please don't leave. But then at the same time, you kind of give that wink, like, dun, 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 and you're just like, well, stay in the fight, but if you can't, we understand. So I don't know. It's a big problem, something I've been trying to figure out through my campaigns ever since day one, and I just haven't been able to figure it out yet.
We talk about the young vote and the challenges with the young vote, and I think some of the things that come about from the young vote is the same challenges that I think all of us experience as youth. Whenever we come out of high school, we're invincible. We're kind of that ignored generation. The only people that matter there are the people in their 50s and 60s and 70s that have the biggest voices. Those are the people that are the biggest representatives. They don't represent me. And what are they doing for me? We all have experienced that, but at the same time, I think we saw something out of Kansas that gives us inspiration about Gen Z, and I think that we need to be able to capitalize and build upon that. But again, that's probably a discussion for another time. But it is a perspective that I think we need to look at. But I was going to get both of you guys to kind of give us a feeling about, have you had a discussion about Flint Ferris and his win out in Dewey County as a Democrat? That's so unheard of in the state of Oklahoma that it made national news.
We
Go ahead.
haven't had a discussion formally because we're kind of all on our own. But at the same time, I think Flint, we need someone who is rooted in their community, is known by folks for their character, regardless of their political party, because that's really what people are gravitating to. And if they know you, they're going to vote for you, just because that's been my experience, having spent I've been still watching elementary music, and that is a big network in Stillwater. And I think that's exactly what we need, and we need to be looking for candidates who have that experience in their communities, who are ready to step up and to serve.
Couldn't agree more. That's absolutely right. I was nobody's pick to be a state representative. No party said, "Oh yeah, you're perfect." What I do have is I'm a lifelong Normanite. I care about my town, and well, obviously, you had to have the spark to get involved with this, which was our state of public education. So yeah, couldn't agree more. I think it's a great sign. I think people are kind of waking up to some of the grift and to some of the problems that you have with one party rule. I mean, I know I heard that on the doors. I spoke to predominantly conservative folks last election in 2022 because I have a district that is still 10%, red. I'm probably one of the only Democrats left with that kind of split. I think maybe one of us in Tulsa, Representative Provenzano, might have that type of thing going on too. It makes it tough, but it makes it kind of cool too, because we can just kind of identify mostly with the folks rather than with the party whenever you're the opposite of the majority of your district. That's why I really wish that we would cut our districts a little bit differently sometimes. But that's coming from a guy who's in a red district. You know what I mean? What we really need to do to see this type of thing happen again is make sure that we don't have, just straight blue seats and just straight red seats. And that's what it's kind of come down to. And honestly, that's what it's come down to in the nation as well. So seeing little things like this, it's a little bit big thing. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a county commissioner's race, which, by the way, I think he's the only Democrat county commissioner in the state now.
Right.
It's awesome. But yeah, it's because he reflected his community, and he probably did the hard work too. That's two things you got to have if you ever want to run for office.
So there was a couple of things that I was going to bring up for discussion. Number one was talking about straight party voting. In the second, in how straight party voting affects and impacts elections. But Jacob, you already talked about the fact that, like you and Melissa Provenzano are in red districts, and you did the work, and people broke from that challenge or the ease of just voting straight party and voting for the individual. And the other thing was, is there a possibility that we could probably pick up more Democrats if we went to these smaller elections like the one that we just had, that are not tied to the midterms or to the general election? And and get that, have that 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 knowledge.
Definitely what we need to be doing. If you look at the other side, it's what they've been doing decades now. Remember, this was never a big red state up until relatively recently. Now that's not to say that there's a ton of those Democrats that don't identify with the Democratic Party anymore. That's another thing I want to address. I saw the massive numbers of more Republicans and fewer Democrats. Well, that doesn't mean necessarily that's how they're going to vote. I'm starting to see a little. Hey, we need to switch now, because if you remember back in the day, you had to be a Democrat to get anything done. So there was hardly any Republicans except in areas now that are mostly Democrat. So that's what we kind of need to look at too. Don't be so worried about numbers, and be more kind of focused on what you're hearing, and be that voice for your folks, really, no matter if they have an RDI, whatever, behind their name. Trish, do you kind of see the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. Because, I've got more Republican voters in my district as well. And what I find is that they are not going to vote they're not Trump Republican voters. They're Republican voters who are basically registered Republican, but they vote differently, and they're willing to cross the ballot and vote for a Democrat because they know who that person is. And that's one of the things too. I mean, you know, I've put forward, I have a bill this session that would eliminate straight party voting. The chairman refused to hear it. So it's still there, and we'll try to push for it again. But you know, the party in power, regardless who they are, like straight party voting because it's really easy to get people to vote. Because you know, people are, the number one thing I hear at the doors is, you know, I don't know much about politics. And what they're telling me is they don't know much about how civics works. And so they think, oh, I'm registered Republican, so I'll just vote Republican, or I'm registered Democrat, I'll just vote Democrat and just do straight party. And that's been a selling tool to get out the vote. But I think that is part of the reason why we have such a political divide now, is that this whole idea that, you know, I either wear a red jersey or I wear a blue jersey, and we're competing against each other, and that's not it. We're actually trying to work together to create a better society, and we need to be shedding those jerseys and really working together.
Couldn't agree more. And nice little analogy to sports, since you know you're in Stillwater and I'm in OU.
That's right. But, you know, as far as like looking ahead, I mean, we have a goal of 24 by 24 in the Democratic caucus here in the House. And we're looking at districts that did well. Joy Hoffmeister did well. Gina Nelson did well. And we're looking at those districts to see, okay, well, if those candidates did well, then it's possible that another Democrat could do well in this district too. And so really trying to work with candidate cultivation, working with the county party, if there is one, and just trying to make sure that we provide support for those candidates going forward.
So we're being honored the presence of a good friend of mine, Andy Fugate, and I wanted to give him
Andy.
Hi, Andy.
A minute. He had a comment that I wanted to let him get on here and talk about.
Okay, so I'm laughing. Honored. It's an honor for me to be invited to join in this conversation. Terrific conversation from my colleagues. And I just wanted to kind of amplify what I heard earlier. And that is, I think it's contingent on all of us to really be focused on these down ballot races. We need to show, especially rural Oklahoma, that Democrats know how to govern. We know how to work with folks. We know how to make things happen. Because so many people are being elected today who are looking for the ambition side of things, or, you know, it's all about them. And the more people we put in place that are sane and sensible and actually get things done that are meaningful, I think the better opportunity we will have in the long run to really begin to shift this state.
Yep, I would totally agree.
So the last question before we we are at an hour now, and we try to limit this to about an hour. But before we go on, Trish, where are you going to next? What's your plans for the next few days that you want to share with us?
Well, I get a chance to visit Quartz Mountain this weekend for the Oklahoma Arts Institute, and we've got at least five Stillwater Public School students that are involved in the program. So I'm going to be going out there this weekend. I also have a plan to visit as many state parks this summer as possible, because my idea of therapy is getting in the car and driving to new places. And so I'm going to be able to check off Quartz Mountain as one of my state parks for the summer.
And Representative Rosecrants, what do you have plans that you want to share with us, you know, for the next few days and weeks?
Well, sure. Number one, I want you all to be weather aware. We're going to have some weather this evening around about 7 or 8 o'clock. That's going to look more like May than June. I've been watching this day for a while, so I'm not a meteorologist, but this is like my other love. If it wasn't so much math oriented, I probably would be a meteorologist. But just want everybody to be careful, because that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go storm chasing, but I think they're coming here, so we're going to kind of post up and take a look at some of that. But beyond that, I got the kids. It's Father's Day weekend. I know my son was telling me that he wants to play a new video game, so I'm going to be down with that action. I have done what I do after every session is to do as much as I can to spend time with my family, especially on off election years. And this is after years of being up there. I don't think I was that way at first. But now it's kind of a different deal, and it's more not only for them, it's for me too. I've got to get myself back into the zone, of family, and then also obviously being a representative. And that's my main thing. We started this little, so Representative Deck, Representative Menz, and I were the Norman contingent, and we're all friends. And that's saying something, because we don't always see eye to eye, even if we're, the same on politics, but we're friends. And we team up, and we've got a fundraiser planned coming up in July, which I know seems weird. It's a fundraiser in kind of like put a bow, on the session type thing. We got that going on. So we're keeping very united, and we're keeping very much trying to stay with our constituents. So we're going to start going to different breweries, I believe, and start having conversations around town. Some in his district, some in her district, some in my district, because we got them spread around. So that's the type of thing we're going to be doing right now, is tightening up Norman and making sure that everything's, ready to go. Also, I have two interim studies I'm preparing for as well. One on the importance of geographic education in Oklahoma for the workforce, 21st century workforce. And one that is kind of meant to bring some light to different outside the box ideas for graduation for high school students. So be on the lookout for those, and just realize that if you want to come see me, come on down to HD 46 and I'll show you around. And Kevin, you already know that because you live here.
Yeah. Well, but that being said, here's the one ambition that I wanted to do for this summer is I wanted to have a recognition barbecue at my place for all of the Democrat representatives and senators, and I still have plans on doing that. I got sidetracked building a shop in the backyard, but now that we're getting closer to completion on that and getting the backyard back in shape, I'm going to try to do something in probably the first part of August before the session starts back up again. In the heat of the summer. I don't know why I want to do that, but I think it's something that would be a fun time. And again, it's recognition for all the hard work that you guys do representing us. And so we're going to try to get that accomplished. So I may lean on you a little bit, Jacob, just to make sure that we can get this accomplished in good taste and a good manner.
I think it sounds like a great idea. Kevin, I really just love the fact that I was kind of on the ground level when you started this, and I'm just really proud of what you turned it into. If you guys don't know Kevin, he wasn't exactly always this kind of involved, and he's gotten there. And that just goes to show you, if you have the ideas and the passion and really the time, then you can really do a lot of good things. So I appreciate the idea of the barbecue. I'll help you get things rolling on that too. And definitely you can count on the Norman contingent swinging on by, because who don't like barbecue? Woo.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm really good at smoking a great big brisket. That's probably my specialty. So I'm planning on doing that, and some baked beans, some mashed potatoes, and some potato salad. And
I'll bring some brewskis from one of the breweries.
Oh,
I
there
had
you
this
go.
amazing pickle brew, which I know sounds weird, but yeah, no, I think it sounds great. This sounds like a fun time. So just keep in touch.
Kevin, I have a question though.
No, you're not invited.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I'm totally down for this, but I do have a question. Potato salad, mayonnaise or mustard?
Oh, mustard. What's wrong with people with mayonnaise?
Well,
don't tell me you like mayonnaise.
No, I don't. So I use a little bit of mustard, probably half mustard, but my go-to is Miracle Whip.
Oh, there you go.
I'm heavy on the mustard. I've even done brown mustard before. I'm crazy.
You people. What we need is German warm potato salad.
Hey,
No.
Yeah.
No, not in the summer.
That sounds good.
Well, hey, before we get off of here, I want to say thank you very much, Representative Rosecrants. Representative Ranson, also Representative Fugate. You guys have been awesome. Appreciate everything you guys are doing. You've just been outstanding, and we're looking forward to supporting you as best we can coming forward, and trying to use our platform to help you however we can. So please lean on us. We're here to serve you.
You bet. And you're welcome to come up to Stillwater anytime.
Yes, please. I want to come up there. Let's do this in a couple of weeks again. Let's come up there and let's see if we can get a few more people online, because I'm eager to come up and visit with you in Stillwater.
That's awesome.
So let's talk a little bit about Coffee with Democrats. We normally do one session on Thursday, but we're going to have an extra session today. So at 6 p.m. tonight, we're going to have an extra Coffee with Democrats with our special guest, Josh Bocanegra from California. He's running for Adam Schiff's place. As you know, Adam Schiff is moving on to run for Senate. So we're going to have him on and talk about him. We're going to talk about his experiences, and we're going to talk about what he has to bring to the people of California and to the people of the nation. So we're really excited about this opportunity to have somebody that, is from a national stage come on to Coffee with Democrats. As you know, we've talked about it all the time. Coffee with Democrats is growing, and we encourage anybody that is out there from one of the states, if you want to become a member of Coffee with Democrats and form a chapter in your state, let me know, and we'll get that arranged. It's been a little bit slow this summer, not been getting things going as fast as I want to get things going, but Coffee with Democrats now is in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Connecticut, Ohio, Virginia. We're getting ready to have some others that are interested too. So we're really excited about the growth of Coffee with Democrats. It was something that was beyond our wildest dreams. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And until this evening at 6 o'clock, please be safe. Please be weather aware. We do have some nasty stuff coming this way. So again, thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you this evening at 6 o'clock.
Thanks, Kevin. See ya. Bye, y'all.